Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I am rejoined after a long time away with my brother from another mother, a Mr. Brian E. Roach. What's going on, Brian?
It's nice to be back in the friendly confines. The twins from someplace. I don't know. I don't have any snappy banter to talk about right now.
Is that that's the double mint gum? It's the tandem bicycle. We're back.
Yeah, there you go.
We're back,
double
buddy.
Mint twins.
No, I missed you. It's been a while. It's like the professor was starting an Eli Manning starts streak here in your place, or in my place even. And, you know, we've all been traveling, moving around, doing all kinds of stuff. So our schedules hadn't really lined up. And I'm sure everybody missed having the dynamic duo back on their feed, wherever they're listening from.
Sure. I believe that's true. Absolutely. I think they missed us. And maybe we'll find out.
Well, they missed me. They missed me anyways, but I got to get I have to get through some banter first. And I mean, it's like, what else do we have to talk about? We do have football to talk about. I guess we have football to talk about. There is a game coming up Friday. We're coming to you a little early just to get ahead of this Friday kickoff, 7:30 p.m. as it states. And I guess there's all kinds of places you could try and watch this. And if you don't happen to catch it, NFL Network. For those of you who aren't in a local or regional area broadcasting any of the Pittsburgh Steelers affiliate network, because these are all on, like, this is KDKA that pretty much runs the show for the preseason home games. So you could catch a rebroadcast to NFL Network. Just check their schedule, of course, too. And some other banter I just wanted to go through real quick, too, as the season approaches. You know, we have a few people on deck as usual. We have our partners and sponsors as usual. But I wanted to mention, if you have a business or work for any type of company that's looking for exposure, especially some rabid football fans. We do get a lot of people that aren't just Pittsburgh Steelers fans, but primarily our audience. If you're looking to reach folks like Brian or myself, reach out to us through our website at steelcityunderground.com, or look in the show notes. So we also have our email address with the fan mail and our phone number listed there as well. And of course, it's always on deck for anyone who wants to leave any type of text messages or voicemails with hotline too. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to discuss after we actually see some preseason football. I do want to elaborate, though, in this particular episode. Usually, you know, we get into the regular season, you know, this is like the appetizer, you know, so you're not getting the full course meal here. Even if you're getting a little bit of it, you might get some wings, but you're only going to get like 4 on the sampler platter, okay? And maybe a little bit of celery and a couple dinky fries. It's not the full entree. It's not even quite the lunch menu just yet, because it's only week 1 of the preseason. So we got to lower some of the expectations. We've already heard Coach Tomlin tell us that Josh Dobbs was going to be the starter. I kind of assumed that. We know a depth chart already came out. Myself and the professor, I think we pretty much nailed that, even down to saying, you know, the veterans get listed first, and Mark Barron's in there at first. And there's all kind of people that are, you know, panicking about this or that. The depth chart is so ridiculous that the way it's got to be filled out, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers even have a press release on their website, because they're moving over to like a 3-4 defense, and they're having to like describe where they're putting certain players, and there's no spot even on their depth chart to list like a nickel or slot corner, which is very important, because very similar to like the Steelers in a lot of ways, and we'll see that as we go through some of the players and coaching staff, actually, with Tampa Bay, that is. You know, there a lot of teams are playing like nickel and dime and all these other different sub packages. So when you have like Mike Hilton listed, I don't know, like 45th cornerback on the depth chart, he's actually playing a lot more snaps than, you know, most of the other guys that are, you know, listed there. So as myself and the professor said, take that with a grain of salt.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Tomlin himself has said repeatedly that for several seasons, in fact, that he fills out a depth chart at this point because the press makes him fill out a depth. They want one, so he does one. But it means nothing. You know, people who are going to worry that Devin Bush is a backup on this depth chart instead of a starter, don't worry. It means nothing. None of this means anything yet. We haven't seen them in game action of any kind yet, and until we get through a couple of these preseason games, and that depth chart actually starts to shake out into something more similar to what we will see once the real games start. It's, as you guys said, you nailed it, but it wasn't that hard, and it doesn't really mean anything yet.
Yeah, I know, and it really probably means less than anything. I mean, I remember a few seasons ago there was wasn't there a big to do about where Arthur Moats was listed on the depth chart, and it was just one of the most ridiculous things. Then he goes out, and I think that's the game he had 3 sacks in a preseason game, and it was just ridiculousness. So I guess that's somewhere to start, I guess. I already mentioned Josh Dobbs. Ben Roethlisberger will not be playing in this game, and there will be a whole lot.
Surprise.
Oh, I know. Very shocked. You know what? Maybe we shouldn't even start with that. We should probably start with, who else isn't going to play in this game off the top of my head. Let's see. I don't even have the depth chart in front of me, Brian.
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up here for a second because I could run through. We know Ben's not going to play. We know AB's not going to play. Oh, wait, that's a different team. We don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah. It's got frozen feet. Mr. Frozen Feet can't play.
Oh, ridiculous. The self-torment even to himself. I don't know, man. It was tough. I don't know if you got to watch the Hard Knocks episode that just aired. But
where's Roethlisberger?
Well, that was one of the things. For a guy that doesn't call or talk or is never around his family or comes to his house or whatever, why are his kids asking where Ben is? That was the oddest thing. That's the question that popped up to me, especially such young kids that don't even, they don't really, I don't think, understand that he changed teams or anything like that. They're real young, and it's good. He looks like he appears to be a good family guy. He appears to be a good dad from everything they show with that. But a whole other circumstance here, I look at him and I'm I can't really believe some of the things that he's saying. I just have trouble with it. It just doesn't. It seems like he's kind of almost like a con artist in a sort of way. You know what I mean? It keeps sinking in the back of my head, and I hate to even talk about him anymore, but that just came up in my brain. The whole opening to that show with Gruden, and how Gruden was basically yelling at some of these players and telling them, well, I'm the head coach, so my way goes. It's just funny. These guys, this guy's like a rookie. Hey, come on, man, you can't cut me, coach. And it's you got to do it this way. Don't be going and hitting, especially our guys. I don't want to see you get hurt or one of my other guys get hurt. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it's going to be kind of cool for Raiders fans to see too, to get an inside look on their team. I always worry about if they show too much or what they show. They do an excellent job with putting that together in such a short time frame from when they actually film it too. But I always wonder if I actually want to see a Steelers one or not. It would probably cause, if they did it this year, the camaraderie and everything that we're seeing and how we say they're a stronger team and they're down to business, that might be destroyed by them, I don't know, amplifying some background story of a certain player, and then it causes a drama when the wrong thing is edited or cut to make it seem to fit a certain storyline that they show in this. And I always worry about that if they would have done that with the Steelers. So but we don't have to worry about Mr. Blistered Feet or anything like that going forward. And apparently the third and fifth thing came from another podcast, friends of ours over at BTSC, someone said in comments or Twitter or somewhere else. So if it did, cool, because I'm good friends with Jeff and Lance and some of those guys too. So most of us all get along when it comes to that, but on the same token, when you have people that argue some of the training camp stats, it's come on, man. I mean, we're going to see what Dobbs really does going forward here in the preseason game, as we did in other preseason games. This is when it more or less counts, unless you have something where he throws a pass. I still defend Landry Jones against the Eagles 4 years ago, where he threw 4 picks in one half. It was he threw a ball and it came off of what? What was his name? I've already forgot his name. Kobe. He wore Heath's number.
Hamilton.
That's right. And it came off of his hands. hands. For whatever reason, he didn't come down with it, and it went to a DB, and that happened like on 2 or 3 of the passes. Sometimes the pass is bad. Sometimes the route's wrong. Sometimes a guy tips a ball. There's so many different mitigating factors in that. So if you're hearing that Josh Dobbs threw a lot of picks or incompletions or whatever in practice, they're trying and doing different things. So Dobbs may line up with the old, I was saying the pro set there, Brian, the split backs like Jalen Samuels or J-Sam as we're starting to call him, and Connor both in the backfield and giving different looks. But then Dobbs is running the first team maybe on that one, and maybe something doesn't go right there. And then Rudolph comes in, and Rudolph's able to pick apart guys that are, fifth stringers or whatever that are here in camp and haven't been on an NFL roster and are essentially rookies off the street. So, I mean, it's all relative to the drills that they're running and things like that. That's why I think like training camp stats, even preseason stats to some degree, what you want to look at when you're going to watch this game coming up is you want to see who's doing what and how, not necessarily final score, not necessarily statistics.
Yeah, it's really, it's hard to predict much of anything. First of all, not in this very, very first preseason game, you're looking at, guys who are not probably in most cases not going to be starters, not projected as starters. Some of the offensive line guys might get some time on both teams. Some of the defensive line, some of the position groups that are thinner than others. Maybe some of the starters get some reps, but for the most part, you're not going to see much. And on top of that, you're still seeing them working on things. This isn't the bolted down units that we expect to see 4 weeks into the season. And I say that because, of course, we know that the first 4 weeks are just extended preseason. But,
yeah.
You're going to really, the whole point of these preseason games is to hit other people. Not to hit your guys, but hit other people, and to get a look at how they react to actual game situations. And so the coaches are going to be looking at it, and we as fans, in many ways, ought to be watching the individual performances of the people who we are expecting stuff of that are getting game time. Some of us, you, me, a lot of the people in SEU will watch, all the way into the fourth quarter to see, if Trey Griffey gets in and makes a catch, and if Devlin Hodges or what's Tomlin call him? Duck Dynasty. He's he now is one of my favorite guys because he's got a nickname and it's Duck Dynasty, which is the most ridiculous thing ever. And I love it.
I think I think it comes from, he doesn't really have a beard, but I think it comes from the giant headband. He has like a bigger headband than Baker Mayfield, and I was trying to point it out, but I couldn't zoom in enough with a camera phone over at St. Vincent College to get it anywhere from where I was standing from my vantage point. But it's funny when he warms up. I mean, it's just this huge headband. I don't know if he has like a receding hairline that he's like hiding or what, but it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, so I like it. I'm going to call him Duck Dynasty now. And I'll wait and see if Duck Dynasty gets in the game, and how much time they're getting. But this is the time, if you're interested in the number 2 position battle for quarterback, this is the time to start watching Josh Dobbs and Mason Rudolph. Who starts to get, more snaps? Who is being more effective with those snaps? Are their reads good? Is Dobbs looking like, you have a lot of people have reported he's looked in practice where he's holding the ball too long and relying on his legs a little too much. Unlike how he looked in preseason last year, where he was confident, he was going through his progressions, and he looked the part. Is Mason Rudolph progressed from last year? How do some of the rookies look? Because the rookies will get times, and who is able to play? Who's not going to be on the sidelines dinged up? We're already seeing some questions about Deontay Johnson, whether he is going to hold up in an NFL camp because he's been dinged up. He was dinged up in the mini camps and the OTAs earlier. He's been dinged up here. It's not that he's not getting any time, but, you keep coming off the field, that hinders your progress. So who's going to be in, where are they going to play, and how it works. And don't read too much into whether they win or lose because the game doesn't count.
Yeah, I mean, we can't read too much into. I don't even want to read into like interceptions. I think the thing that really did it for me with Josh Dobbs last preseason was looking at his leadership, his ability to sustain drives, what these guys do on third down. I mean, anybody can throw. I don't want to say anybody, but if somebody throws a touchdown pass or even the guy catching it, doesn't guarantee them a spot on the roster. We saw that with Damone Patterson, who had some pretty electrifying plays and gives you some excitement with the preseason. So I mean, these games aren't all for naught. I mean, well, they are, but I mean, there's a lot of things that are being tested out there, and you just got to know what to look for. You got to look at some of the offensive linemen, see who's blocking well, who's being beat on the defensive end, who's beating whoever. And I remember Duran Grant. I mean, he had a pick six in one of those preseason games, and it was just like, well, that was an easy pick six. It wasn't like there were other things that maybe he didn't do as well, and he was cut. And I mean, he was a 4th round pick, so I mean, it just gives you kind of some insight here, and just looking at some of the different things, jumping all the way around here. Let me see. Well, I mean, they had, I wanted to mention NFL Network again because they were out at Steelers training camp all of yesterday. And there's some great interviews with James Conner and one with Juju Smith-Schuster with Michael Irvin. That was a really great one. And then I think it was Irvin with Mike Tomlin again, and they were asking him about Devin Bush. They're asking him about who's good or whoever. And if it's somebody that's like a veteran type guy, like a Joe Hayden or a Ben or something, I mean, Tomlin just gives his opinion of his praise. When it's a rookie, man, I mean, he makes these rookies work for it. So that's another reason why you might see Devin Bush lower in the pecking order. But he also turns around and says, we wouldn't have moved up to get a guy like Devin Bush, if we didn't think he could do some things for us, fit a certain role. And so far, he's looking blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And it's just like they handle it so well. I wish everybody can be a wordsmith and a soothsayer and everything like Mike Tomlin does, because he says a lot sometimes without saying anything at all, which I think is really great. You see some of the names that are floating in and off the roster, too. Don't think a lot of it has to do with injuries. They need the amount of bodies that they have because guys get dinged up, guys get days off, and they need enough bodies to be able to run certain drills. So when you see certain corners coming on or off, these rosters, unfortunately, we hate to use the word camp bodies. Maybe one of these guys, this is just the opportunity they need, and they might impress someone, but, unfortunately, it's the not-for-long league, and it's just something that I wanted to point out. Another storyline that's coming around too, Brian, since it's on my brain, we're kind of holding on talking about contracts and who might be up the following year or whatever, but right now they're working on Hayden, and apparently Javon Hargrave is next in line as far as priority in the Steelers. If you're not familiar with how they operate, or you're newer to this show and you haven't heard us talk about this before, they will try and do all contracts before the start of the regular season. So by week 1, what is that, a week into September, like the 8th or 9th or something? I have a schedule. Why don't I look at it? They will have everything done, and they won't negotiate. September 8th. I was pretty close. Yeah. Mark that date down with New England. They will have everything done and sewn up, and they won't talk contracts anymore. Very rare that'll do anything in season. Very, very, very extremely rare. Maybe happened once with maybe Troy Polamalu. Maybe. Like that may have been the only one that I could think of in the last decade. So anything that's going to get done is going to get done now while they're still in session, probably a training camp, and they may get some stuff done when they resume practice. Right before, after they make the cuts and everything like that. And then it's over. So we'll probably look and see who's like on deck then too. Just we've got quite a few inquiries about that, but there's not a whole lot. We know who some of the guys are entering their last contract year, such as Bud Dupree, Sean Davis, Hargrave, Joe Hayden, and several others. So we expect there to be some things said and done there. But just going in now, we're going to go back to that with Josh Dobbs. If he plays 2-3 series and then all of a sudden he gets yanked, I wouldn't read too much into it, no matter if he does well or if he does poorly, because I think that they have a certain snap count or whatever, just like a major league pitcher. They're kind of looking at how many reps a guy gets, how many drives a guy gets, and then they're going to want to see Rudolph too. And I know they're going to want to see Rudolph, which makes me wonder if they're how much does Hodges play?
Yeah.
He's the fourth guy, but a lot of people are very high on him, and I don't want to say that I'm not high on them. I just have the realistic expectation of there's no way they keep four quarterbacks, and it would take something disastrous for Dobbs or Rudolph to lose their spots as either the 2 or 3, whichever one you want to plug in where. And Dobbs is the veteran; he's got the chance to retain his position right now. So they also have a guy they invested a pick in when they already invested a pick in Dobbs, and that's Rudolph, and they had a first-round grade on him and things of that nature. So it's going to be interesting to see who plays with Rudolph, when Rudolph plays, if Rudolph starts the next game, because if you remember, Landry Jones played like 4 snaps through like a pass to Juju for a touchdown or something in week 2 of the preseason last year, and he was done, and it was just like, I understand maybe he was banged up here or there too, but he like completely sat out, I think, the 4th game or something like that, and they entirely played Dobbs and Rudolph, and that's how Dobbs won his job, and we just thought, hey, this might say that Landry's safe and it's only between Dobbs and Rudolph, and that wasn't the case. So those are kind of the things you keep an eye on, and this first game it's going to be tough because I don't know how many guys are going to actually play. We were starting to talk about who's not going to play. And pretty much, I think if you are a perennial Pro Bowler and anybody with a high dollar contract, you might not see too much action. So who might that be? Well, we already know Ben's not going to play. Marquise Pouncey is not going to get anywhere near a helmet for this probably the first 2 games and maybe only 1 quarter of the entire preseason. David DeCastro usually plays quite a bit on the offensive line, believe it or not. Ramon Foster gets a lot of veteran privilege, and I know they like B.J. Finney, but B.J. Finney will be the starting center for this game, I would assume. So I don't know where they put Ramon Foster. I know they like Fred Johnson, and they're going to be working him out. They have him on the depth chart as a right guard. We've seen him in the left guard spot during camp. They also have Derwin Gray, who's a rookie. So we're going to see where some of those guys move around. I think Matt Filer will get some time at right tackle. Villanueva, he could play a little bit. He could sit. I think we're going to see a Okorafor a little more on that offensive line. So the offensive line is going to be a hodgepodge. Because of that, you may see the quarterbacks under a little bit of heat. So I have observed Dobbs maybe holding onto the ball for a little too long or anything like that. But also the other thing I want to read into that is that the Steelers defense has also stepped up too. So he's in there with the ones. This is a step up. This is like, this is getting a different engine in your sports car. You're going to the next model. You know what I mean? You're getting the faster car, and the speed of play is much faster. That's the offensive lineman, Brian. Let me see. Who else on offense? They made a comment on NFL Network that was pretty funny to me. They were like, well, James Conner didn't practice today, but you'll probably see him carry the ball a lot in the preseason. No, you will not.
You won't. Yeah.
This is another protect your investment. I think we're going to see Benny Snell quite a bit, to be completely honest, with a dash of Jalen Samuels. And that doesn't mean Jalen Samuels is, in the doghouse. He's just being used as a utility player. So keep that in mind. Rosie Nix might be out there. I don't know, with special teams. They're probably going to be looking at quite a few of the young players, even on special teams, to see who can fill those roles and who might be fighting for a roster spot. We didn't talk about wide receiver. Well, let me finish the running backs. Benny Snell, we will see Trey Edmonds and Ralph Webb, no doubt. I have no doubt in my mind. And then wide receiver-wise, I'd be shocked to see Juju out there. Moncrief may be nursing an injury or something. We'll see if there's an actual injury report that comes out ahead of this game, or if they sit him out, or what. I made mention of him making some one-handed catches and things of that nature. It may have dislocated his finger, and they may be kind of babying him along, as we heard with Sean Davis, too, as far as injuries are concerned. So we're probably going to see, you talk about nicknames, Brian, Bob the Builder.
Yep.
I love it. Eli Rogers. We're going to see like Eli Rogers, Ryan Switzer. We'll see where Deontay Spencer ends up and things of that nature. And I also think, obviously James Washington will get some time too, but I think Vance McDonald will probably not see any action in this first game as well, or very limited to that nature.
That's one of those positions I wonder. You mentioned DeCastro. He almost always plays some snaps in each preseason game. Part of that is usually because I think he enjoys it and wants to get his feet wet, but also because there is a limited amount of offensive line depth that they have, and they want to see as many of these guys as possible. But the Castro usually gets a couple snaps. I don't know whether Ramon will play or not. You're right, Pouncey. No, Villanueva, because he was hurt the other day. Was pulled out of practice. I think I heard he had a big ice bag or something on his shoulder. bandaged up. I would be surprised if he plays unless he comes back to practice fully. I don't know. We'll see. But I think they're going to be careful with all these guys. But there is a limited amount of depth at tight end. Mm-hmm. And what made me laugh when I saw the depth chart is that my boy Christian Scotland Williamson. Hey, I got all three of his names right for once. Yeah. Was listed as third. If there's anything in the world that will tell you that this depth chart doesn't mean anything at all, it's that Christian Scotland Williamson is your third tight end.
Well, let's explain why that is, because he was already in camp previously. So that's another thing. Even if the guys weren't on the, he was an exemption for, the practice squad. But even if they weren't a practice squad or a member of the 53-man roster last year, if they were previously in training camp, such as Tevin Jones or Trey Griffey, they're going to be listed a little higher than somebody who hasn't been there. Although that actually isn't the case, because they had Deontay Johnson higher on the depth chart than both Griffey and Jones, but in most cases that would be true. And Deontay Spencer, the CFL guy, is actually listed higher than Griffey and Brandon Riley, who have I guess a little bit of they're training camp veterans, I guess is the best way to say it, that technically have NFL tenure.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm actually looking forward to seeing Zach Gentry in game situations. I want to see how well he blocks. I want to see whether, as the professor says, he can be a seam buster, and whether he gets open and how he moves with the ball. But I won't be surprised if Vance gets a series or two, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play at all. It's just, I think you're going to see Juju maybe gets in the game, but again, a series two, and then it's going to be everybody else. Mm-hmm. I'll be surprised if Moncrief plays because of that finger. I don't think he's been full go since his finger was hurt. I think he's done like some one-handed catches, but I don't think he's been full go. So I'll be surprised if he plays. But yeah, I think it's a good chance for Steelers fans to get to see a lot of these secondary guys, second stringers. And get an idea of what we have depth-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we're going to go to the defense, too, because, T.J. Watt, just because he came off the PUP list, I wouldn't put him anywhere near the field, too. But Tomlin, we're talking about this with offense, who's going to play and not. The defense, he kind of has almost a different set of rules there. But swinging back just over, it's like, I'm not trying to gloss over anyone here that may or may not play. But the tight ends, I would say Vance McDonald practically. I would sit him, and I would almost sit Xavier Grimble outside of maybe one or two series, because I want to see what the other four guys have. I want to see Christian Scotland Williamson. I want to see Kevin Rader. I want to see Zach Gentry. I want to see Trevor Wood. And this is just another example, too. Not only is CSW third on this depth chart, Kevin Rader is listed as fourth, and that should open your eyes. But he was in camp last year with the Packers, so again, training camp veteran over two guys that are totally new to the NFL in Zach Gentry and Trevor Wood. And Trevor Wood also will audition as a long snapper too. And we're going to see how they alternate that, because Tomlin talked about alternating, and we haven't had another kicker in camp for a while. I'm going to be interested to see if how they switch off Jordan Berry and Berryman. Like if the way they've been doing it in camp is it's been all of the incumbents. That is, your long snapper is Cam Canada, your holder is punter Jordan Berry, and then Chris Boswell is your kicker. I think you're going to see the same thing transpire. They said every other kick is going to be, it's going to be Boswell and or Matthew Wright, every other one, alternating. And I think we'll see Matthew Wright with Ian Berryman as the holder and Trevor Wood as the long snapper. So I'm interested in seeing that and how that works out. And I want to see what distances they kick from, too, if Tomlin puts one of them out there for a longer attempt, and who he chooses to put out there, So there's still some pressure. I mean, Boswell's been hitting him, at camp with ease. He looks like the Wizard of Oz again, but we're going to put him in a stadium setting now. And do you get a little bit of butterflies? Do you have a little bit of PTSD from the last season? I don't know. A lot of it's mental, and we've talked with many people about that before. So we should jump over to the defense, but before I do, I have a bone to pick with you. My name is not Joseph. So I was reminded of that, you guys.
Yes, sure it is. You're Joseph.
No, that's what my mom has a nickname for me me that shall not be repeated. So it's actually, it's like, I talk about how she butchers the English language, so I can't even say that she's properly saying it, but it's either Slovak or a Croatian word that's supposed to mean Joe or Joseph, and I'm not sure that it does. So I'll just take. I am surprised though. She did name a dog that she has. She got it from a neighbor who had a litter years ago, and they took it for a word meaning survivor in Spanish that I'm not going to try and repeat because I'll probably butcher it, and I'm sure she did. But I actually asked, one of these, an Alexa or a Siri or something like that, and watch all the devices are going to go off here in a second. But I actually asked it what Survivor was in Spanish, and it was my mother actually got it right. So kudos to her, feather in her cap. She says things like "warsh" and "measure." So it's just among the other things. When you hear me say "yins," I grew up with that. That's my background. So I do have that. So. Any more banter that we need? Bruce Banter, Black Banter, Banter America, any of the Banter Avengers need to come out here, or we should continue with the defense maybe?
I could do banter for a day, but that doesn't mean anything to anybody except my daughter who got to sing a Rush song at her graduation party.
Oh. But
playing with an actual band called Band for a Day.
I also noticed, this is probably in your heyday. It would probably surprise you, but I saw a Three Dog Night with Starship touring. And they're coming around the neck of the woods, and I'm like, I wonder if they're any good. I think
there's one guy from the original band left in each of those groups, and everybody else is dead.
Yeah, I mean that's usually how it works. But anyways, I digress. You got me thinking about some classic rock and roll there. So let's defense. Yes. I was about to just say your grown ass man isn't going to play. I don't think we're going to see Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward's one of the higher paid guys on the team, but I don't know. Tomlin does this though. These guys may still get a series or two. I guess the defense is there less risk of someone getting hurt on defense? I don't know. Maybe front seven. I don't know that TJ Watt, Stephon Tuitt, are you putting some of these guys out there? We may see Hargrave. We said Mark Barron was listed over Devin Bush. I think we see just a little smattering of this, maybe minus Joe Hayden with the starters. You may actually see you're not going to see Artie Burns in Joe Hayden's spot because they play different sides of the field, and the Steelers are pretty much locked into that. But I think you might see Steven Nelson, Mike Hilton, some guys of that nature. It'll be interesting to see if Joe Hayden doesn't start or who comes in for him. Will it be Brian Allen? Will it be Justin Lane? That's the way they have it marked on the depth chart. And of course, Sean Davis, if he's out, it was funny because they have Marcus Allen listed here as free safety, and he's definitely a strong safety. And Jordan Dangerfield would be the other guy who has played free safety, when Mike Mitchell was out of games too. So Cam Kelly, the Alliance of American Football guy that we talk about, you're probably going to see a large dose of him. And you got some undrafted rookies that are going to get some playing time too with PJ Locke and Drayvon Askew-Henry. Let me see. Let's swing back around. I'm looking at linebackers. Vince Williams, he gets in these games sometimes, but I think everyone's going to be excited on defense, obviously, to see Devin Bush. And we're going to be talking about that in a second because we're going to be talking about, not only are we talking about what the Steelers are putting out there as far as mixing and matching first, second, third, fourth team players, but also what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to bring and how, that's set to project with what the Steelers players look like. Myself and the professor went almost an hour and a half on the last show just, banging the drum about how deep the Steelers roster is, and Tampa Bay maybe not so much. But I think the storyline we're going to be hearing about on Friday is Devin Bush versus Devin White, because these were the two top inside linebackers in the draft, and they both went in the top 10 picks as well to kind of have that pedigree. So we're going to see how much they play in these games and what they do.
Absolutely. It'll be a chance to get some one-on-one visual comparisons to the two guys, see how well they've progressed. I think it's possible that the defense actually gets more time than we think, simply because there's some new parts to the defense, and getting that communication down pat is key for them. And as you're right, Tomlin tends to send the first team defense out in preseason games. if not for a lengthy amount of time, but he wants to see them go out, shut down the other team, and then he'll put in the second guys. And if they don't, like I remember the preseason game in Philly that I was at, and we were getting shellacked, and the first team defense was still on the field in the third quarter.
Yeah, I remember
because
that.
Tomlin just wanted them to do something right. Get one stop, and then I'll let you come off. But so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the guys get a series, provided that series goes well. That's all they get. But they certainly won't be playing deep into the game. But I think it'll be interesting to see how much time both the Devons get. It'll be interesting if you're interested in AFC South football in any way, shape, or form, or NFC South football with the Buccaneers, to see how this new revamped defense with Ndamukong Suh playing at an end and as a defensive end, and how that all kind of comes to fruition and how it looks. It'll be interesting to see. And plus, just to get a chance to yell at Bruce Arians and see if he gets a quarterback killed or not.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was about to jump over to Tampa Bay. Let me get 1 second, though, and talk about who might be doing the killing, because if TJ's not out there, you're going to see Chicolo's still the primary backup at outside linebacker, but I think we're going to see a nice little dose of Ola out there. And if he's doing what he's been doing in camp and capable of doing it, and I think he will against Tampa, isn't necessarily even their starting offensive line isn't necessarily strong, and they're not deep. They're nowhere near as deep as the Steelers. They're in transition somewhat from last season. There's quite a few guys that have come and gone, and we're talking about Bruce Arians with his former Steelers ties, and he's supposed to be the quarterback whisperer here with Jameis Winston, but I don't know if we see Winston or not. I mean, Winston is he's fifth-year optioned, so he's still playing for a contract, and this is a team that this is new. There's a lot of new moving parts. There are 3-4 defense now and all sorts of other things. So it'll be interesting to see who they put on the opposite side of the field. And we also have to keep that in mind with when Dobbs and Rudolph and these guys are all doing their thing, Benny Snell and stuff of that nature, because I don't know necessarily we're going to see Ndamukong Suh on the opposing defense, or Vita Vea, or, William Golston. Those guys, those front three, that's an imposing force there. And more than likely it'll be some of the backups there that they'll see with the Steelers offense. And talk about getting quarterbacks killed, I was looking up Vinny Testaverde Jr., who is a free agent rookie in the Tampa Bay camp. His old man, first overall pick with Tampa Bay, and holds most of their passing records still. So that's kind of interesting too. You may get to hear a little bit about that backstory and see him play in the game. He's much on the same level. I'm not going to say he's on the same level as Devlin Hodges. Devlin Hodges is, I really like Devlin Hodges, and if this were a different year, I think he has a shot at making the roster. But it'll be interesting to see what Devlin Hodges does playing with a bunch of other guys who are fighting for the same kind of opportunities and maybe not as seasoned or experienced. So just kind of interesting. Vinny Testaverde Jr. is the fourth quarterback on the roster, and if anybody can mold anybody, it's probably the quarterback whisperer Bruce Arians. But he also has a tendency to get them busted up into pieces, and then he has to remold them as well, as we've seen in the past with so many guys, unfortunately. So I don't know. I don't think we see Jameis Winston. More than likely on their depth chart, which I was just looking at, it looks like Blaine Gabbert, who was around and got murdered under Bruce Arians once before out in the desert when he was the head coach with Arizona. And then Ryan Griffin is another one to look at there with Vinny Testaverde Jr. And they have another name that I'm not familiar with at all, Nick Fitzgerald. But at least in the case, if you try and look at something on Tampa's website with Nick Fitzgerald, he at least has a profile picture in a Buccaneers uniform. Vinny Testaverde Jr. has like the 60-minute shadow guy. They don't even have a photo for him, which is kind of sad in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But likewise, we're talking about the offense with Tampa Bay. I don't think we'll see Mike Evans Do we see like O.J. Howard or Cameron Brate? Like they have two solid tight ends, maybe. Chris Godwin, who stepped up last year, is going to have to step up more now that they lost Adam Humphries. Their running backs is just kind of like, I don't know who's going to step up here because they were all very miserable with yards per carry. Peyton Barber led that crew, I think, around 3.7. But Ronald Jones, he was under 2 yards per carry. So, I mean, they got a lot of things, a lot of moving parts there. There's going to be a lot of guys you don't recognize. There are some former players of the Ravens. Brashad Perryman, you might recognize him as one of the wide receivers who's been bouncing around. Demanded that he leave Cleveland after the Odell Beckham trade. That's like he just signed that contract and then they voided it, remember? And he was just kind of getting his footing up there too, which is kind of sucks. And, he's starting over again. And then Ryan Jensen's a name you may remember, too. He's a starting center for Tampa Bay. But, again, like Marquise Pouncey, I don't know how much they'll risk having somebody like him out there, but formerly of the Baltimore Ravens as well. So you may recognize a few of those names. In addition to Scott Orndorff. He's in camp there as one of the other tight ends, a very deep tight end position group for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, and it's hard to say what Arians is going to do because it's as you say, he's never been afraid to just say, "I want to see what guys got," and throw them out there. So you could see. While I'd be stunned if you see Mike Evans, maybe you do see Mike Evans in the first series. Maybe probably not, but I think any of the second, third year guys, he's getting to know this group. So I think there's a good chance that we see more of their upper echelon guys for longer periods of time than we will with the Steelers. That's just in my head. It could be complete nonsense. I may be not channeling my inner Bruce Arians well. I don't know. But we'll see. Because I just have a feeling with Bruce that he kind of wants to know what he's got. And that doesn't mean starting Farrington Huguenin.
No, and I didn't get to the defense yet, but you may recognize, obviously I mentioned the 3 up front, but in the 3-4, the linebackers, we talked about Devin White. I think we'll see a lot of him. They have Kevin Minter also. Deion Buchanan kind of is almost like a Mark Barron, that he's kind of like the dimebacker kind of role. So they're going to be doing a lot of similar things and probably playing some nickel as well. Outside linebackers, I mean, Carl Nassib, converted defensive end over from the Cleveland Browns. They picked him up off waivers last year, and he was kind of one of the bright, shiny, flashy names on Hard Knocks, too, so I think that was a surprise to some. And then Noah Spence. We're familiar with Noah Spence. He's also an outside linebacker in this scheme. Quite a few, actually, homegrown players either on both sides of the ball. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're all good, but they are returning, for all intents and purposes, 9-9 on both sides of the ball as far as their starters, which is a lot more to say than some of the other teams that we've covered, even in the AFC North. Their whole secondary are guys that they've pretty much brought in through the draft. You have Carlton Davis, you have Vernon Hargraves. I believe Hargraves was just coming off of an injury. There's some other guys like Justin Evans, who might be somebody that competes for a starting spot. MJ Stewart. I mean, there's all kind of guys. They're all over the depth chart here. Sean Murphy-Bunting, who's a rookie, and you're looking at the way they laid out their depth chart. Those guys are like second and third on the Tampa depth chart, whereas you're probably going to see some of them a little more than others just to see how they fit as new to the team or younger inexperienced players over some of the names that are there like Mike Edwards or Jordan Whitehead or anything of that nature. And then, of course, some of these players also brought in, after the draft and things like that. So they got a lot of the same stuff with college and street free agents that they'll have to look at. And then there's Jason Pierre-Paul, who got in a car accident, and we don't know anything, basically what his status is going to be for the upcoming season. So you're probably not going to see anything from him anytime soon either. But I just wanted to mention that he's still on the roster, for all intents and purposes, which I say way too much anymore. Shaq Barrett's another guy that's kind of, a veteran player that, he's going to be trying to fit into this scheme too. And so, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what's thrown at Josh Dobbs and Mason Rudolph as you go through this progress. But for, this is going to look like, the 3-4 that they probably, sometimes practice against. Depends on the look at what they're doing, what the Steelers are trying to do, scout teams and things of that nature. They're going to change it, obviously, to work against teams with a 4-3. But some similarities here, between the Steelers and the Buccaneers. And I would be remiss, Brian, to not mention, I don't know if you got anything to say about these defensive guys, but I wanted to mention just how many guys on the coaching staff that we may be familiar with here. And it's I don't want to say a who's who necessarily, but it starts with Bruce Arians, obviously. He's the head coach, formerly an offensive coordinator with the Steelers. You have Byron Leftwich. Remember, he was supposed to be doing the AAF deal as an offensive coordinator and left before the first week of the season. He's an offensive coordinator now with Tampa Bay, which is kind of interesting. Antoine Randall L. is an offensive assistant. There's another guy named here, offensive quality control, John Van Dam. Do you happen to know his middle name?
Claude?
Yeah, I think so. I just thought it would be funny. It's not anywhere near spelled the same way, but Jean-Claude Van Damme, that'd be kind of funny. Todd Bowles becomes their defensive coordinator. We're familiar with that name from all over the place in past Steelers encounters. Larry Foote is working the outside linebackers, and I'm trying to think if I'm looking down the rest of this to see if there's any other interns. They got a lot of quality control guys, which is quite interesting. So, that's pretty much it right there. There's all these former Steelers guys there: Larry Foote, Randall L., and Byron Leftwich, all former Steelers players, and then Bruce Arians, a former coach.
Yeah, it's Steelers Southeast.
Pretty much. It's getting there. It was the Titans, and then Coach Dad left there, and then, some of those things didn't work out, like Valentino Blake. So it didn't quite go that way. But, you'll see some of this probably brought up. I'm sure they're going to show some shots. It's a Steelers home game, so it's going to be a Steelers broadcast. Unlike some of the away games, you're going to get the away team broadcast. So you're probably going to get some type of sideline shot, at least of Leftwich, I would guess, unless for some reason Arians is calling plays. I'm not privy to that information at this time. And you may see something with Larry Foote, or it may even be a picture. You may see some of these guys get together with some of the Steelers guys and take a photo or something. So that'd be kind of neat to see. You get your first week. There's a little bit of pressure. I think there's going to be some butterflies with some of the young men that are going to go out there and play. Just be aware. If you're going to the game, it'll be decently attended. Like I said, it's always a good time if you could bring a kid or something that doesn't get to usually see the Steelers, because tickets are a little bit cheaper, usually not as rowdy of a crowd, because a lot of those people are like, this is preseason. We don't want anything to do with that. But there's some guys to get excited about and keep an eye on here and see how their development works. And we're going to see who, excites us, who lights a fire here and really shines in the preseason, and maybe makes a name for themselves, even though we think most of the 53 is kind of locked up for the most part, just based on the guys who've already been there, done that, and been around for a while. Yeah,
it's going to be tough, and we've said this all off season. It's going to be tough for anyone not named Devin Bush. And maybe not named Deontay Johnson, to really find a way to crack the 53. It's, some of these other guys, Zach Gentry will probably make the team, we think. But some of the other guys, it's going to be tough sledding, because this is a talented team with a pretty solid starting setup. So. It doesn't mean that somebody can't surprise, and this is going to be their opportunities starting, in this game to do so. It is true to say that this is their chance to seize the opportunities that they've been given, because practice is great and they like to see things in practice. But I can tell you, if you make some splash plays in the preseason games, especially if you're playing during the varsity half of the game, that goes a long way to finding a way to cement your role on the team.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to give everybody my 5 to watch for this game. I'm going to put you kind of on the spot, but I'll give you a second to think it over a little bit.
Sure.
On defense, obviously Devin Bush, and I'm going to say Artie Burns. There's 1 and 2 right there. I think Artie's had a more solid camp. Let's see how this translates into a real-time game situation on offense. Keep an eye out. Deontay Spencer might be this year's wide receiver who pops off the page. For those of you who might want to keep an eye on offensive linemen and like your offensive line porn, Chooks Okorafor. Keep an eye on him, especially. I wanted to say, though, with the Villanueva thing and the ice bag on the shoulder, even when I'm there at St. Vincent, I don't usually report anybody that's getting iced. I mean, Ben even got iced, and it's like, let's not induce any panic. But, somebody puts that word out there, and all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, come on. I mean, Ben called it an early practice the first week. I think on Saturday called it an early practice and had an ice bag on it. I think some of that's just preventative. So my third is Spencer, my fourth is Okorafor, and my fifth is going to be Benny Snell, because I think he's the guy who's going to come out there and pop someone in the mouth and get an ooh and ah, very similar to a Vance McDonald play last year.
Not bad. I like those guys. I'm going to start off with Ola.
I like it.
Because to me, that's my guy all through this preseason. I'm going to have eyes on Ola. And just because I want to see the athleticism. I want to see the pass rush moves. I want to see the domination, and I want to see it at a varsity level and not just a JV level. So Ola's one of the guys I'm going to definitely be keeping my eye on. You took Okorafor because I'm bouncing. I'm going to bounce. I'm not just sticking to defense, offense. What the hell? He's another guy that I want to look. I agree with a lot of what the beat writers are saying, which is that they believe the Steelers really want Chooks Okorafor to take that job at right tackle. Mm-hmm. It's there for him to do. Filer gets it as the incumbent right now, but they want Okorafor to show that he's the better player because I think he has more upside than Filer does. So I want to see how he responds to that. So I'm going to be watching that. I know the professor will as well. Artie Burns is another good one because he's going to get playing time as a second-tier corner. And I think I read an article, and I don't remember whether it was Wexel or Reuter or one of the other guys, but they talked about how he has settled into the idea that what his upside may be is solid depth, mm-hmm. and not a star. And if he can kind of get his head wrapped around that he doesn't have to live up to that number one billing anymore, and he just can be a good backup. Maybe he can stick, and that does not mean I'm on his nuts.
Well, let me cut in on that too. He's getting an awful lot of work with special teams, and as we know, he's a track just freak of nature when it comes to his speed. So I mean, if he's settled into something like that, it took Ike Taylor a while to kind of get settled in and become Ike Taylor. Minus his hands, they never caught up, and he's still working on that. But
he's still working on that.
But I mean, that could be Artie Burns this year too, or in the near future even. Even if he plays like 8 or 9 seasons, if he's settled into that and he doesn't feel he wants to go try and start for another team and be one and done with somebody and out of the league, and he feels, hey, I can sign a 2-year contract with the Steelers, see where this goes, and Joe Hayden isn't going to play forever. He's in his early 30s, so that's definitely, as much hate as we may get, that gives a longer extended period of time for the organization and Artie Burns to develop, grow, see what they have, and there's always other drafts and free agent classes and things as you move forward that far in the into the future.
Yep, absolutely. Another guy that I'm going to watch is Bugsy. Bugsy Malone, Isaiah Buggs. I want to see if he can be Jay Wobble 2. Is really what I'm looking for. I want to see if he's got that kind of quickness and burst. I want to see how he performs. He probably will be a second half player, but that's okay. I need guys to watch in the second half too. And how many did I do? 4 or 3?
Let me see. You had Ola, Okorafor, and Artie, right?
Artie and Bugsy. So, and then the last guy I'm going to keep my eye on is actually the Wizard of Oz. And the reason that I say that is as you said, he's been the Wizard of Oz at practice. But is he going to be the Wizard of Oz in a game stadium under game conditions?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I need to see because of all the position issues that they have, they're probably a playoff team if Boswell is Boswell instead of who showed up last season. Because he probably wins them 3 more games. And I want to see money return. I want to see the guy who was always money, the Wizard of Oz, and so I'm going to be watching him as well.
Oh, and so will everyone else. And again, with guys who had a down season like Burns or Boswell, there's been a lot of encouraging words from most of the folks that have been at St. Vincent College, which
absolutely
I'm very happy with because like the Twitterverse and Facebooks and things of that nature is almost like a cesspool of negativity at times, and it's not healthy for these guys that are rebounding. They need as much encouragement and positive reinforcement as possible, and they don't need other things on their mind. They need to be able to go out there and do the job to the best of their ability, and hopefully that ability means that they return back to form or what we felt that they could be. So that's part of what this preseason's for. So it's going to be exciting to watch for the most part, at least a quarter. And
yeah.
I hate to rag on preseason games. I mean, we all know what it is. We all know it's primarily like backups and rookies. And as long as you're watching for that and you don't come out of it on Saturday morning like, well, the Steelers lost 35 to 10, it's just like, who cares? It really doesn't count for anything other than evaluation purposes. So please, I don't want to hear that the defense got scorched for, 3 touchdowns if it's like the third team guys or anything like that. But I don't know. We're going to see what kind of splash some of the guys make. And I know Devin Bush is, at the king of the mountain right now as far as the guys we want to watch. So, Brian, any parting words, my friend?
I just need to get this off my chest before we get too far into the season. And I just want everyone to know that I have not forgotten the refs stink.
Oh, man. They may, I don't want to go there just yet. Come on, man. We were just talking about the cesspool of negativity, and I think that just puts me in a dark place when I start to think about that. So we'll see. I mean, there's quite a few new referees and stuff too in the NFL from what I saw, and some guys that retired, and their job doesn't become any easier when there's like camera angles everywhere, and then you add the defensive pass interference stuff that's going to be coming into play now too, and that can be reviewed up by the booth, initiated by them too, if they see something that's an egregious, play that either way it was called and it shouldn't have been, or it was completely missed. I guess it could be initiated with a booth review. I was trying to read into that and see if that was only in the 2-minute period or what, but maybe like all the other plays. But I thought that was interesting. I guess it's in my brain because of the Sky Judge that they had in the AAF. I really wish we had the referees mic'd up so we could get more what they're thinking instead of the guys like talking on TV, and they hire a former referee and they give their opinion, which is, that's tough enough when you're already, friends with the guys that are probably still blowing a whistle and throwing flags out there, and, they have to give their opinion in real time. And then all of a sudden it comes back and it's like, after review, we have decided that everything they said on TV is completely wrong and we're going with the opposite. So that's usually how it works. So, all right, Brian, well, thanks for joining me once again. Thank you, listeners. Thank you for everyone and your support. We truly appreciate it. Don't forget, if you got any questions for us, feel free to contact us by all of the information here that'll be said shortly or in our show notes. My name is Joe Kuzma. He is a Mr. Brian E. Roach, and until next time, we encourage all of our listeners to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.